Alright, welcome to my Witch Starter. This is a walkthrough for beginners to the game or those who are less experienced with it. Maybe you tried it once and you got frustrated and you wanted to give it another shot. I think this guide will help you and hopefully make the game fun for you. It can be pretty difficult to get started with Path of Exile, but it really doesn't have to be. So my background here, I signed up for Path of Exile back in 2013 actually, but really started playing the game seriously in 2017. I played the past 26 leagues. It's about 8 years. I was still excited for each new league that comes out. Really enjoy the game. It's got ups and downs. Sometimes the developers make decisions I'm not that happy about, but all in all, it's really a tremendous game. It just has so much appeal in so many different ways. I tend to play Witch, minion characters, or I always try to anyways. Some leagues minions are not great, so I'm happy to play other characters as well, but I do tend to favor minions if they're viable for the league. I tend to make my own characters. Sometimes I'll find other people's guides and follow them, but generally I have a hard time sticking with other people's plans, to be honest. I just find it fun to make my own characters. I aim towards automating things and the mechanical interactions of the game. It's really what I find to be appealing. It's if you think about it, it's almost a little bit like computer programming, where you've got different functions based on the items, the passive tree, all these different elements that kind of work together as a system. So you're developing your character is like a system of equipments and stats, and yeah, that's really where the game is interesting to me. So I create a character, some crazy idea. They're not always good ideas, to be honest, but play them while they're fun. If they're good characters, usually I'll play to them around 80 to 90, and then I start getting bored with it. I'll re-roll. Sometimes I'll make 10 characters in a league, sometimes more. I really don't like min-maxing. I find that part of the game kind of stressful to, farm so much for all this currency and then sink it into one tiny upgrade for your character. And I know a lot of people are into that, and that's what the game is all about to them, but for me, if I'm not enjoying the game within the first couple of acts of the campaign, the skill I'm using, then I don't want to progress it to endgame. Like, there's no fun in me playing an awful character that's highly effective. That's just not interesting to me. So I'd rather play bad characters that are fun and see how far I can get with them. That's the challenge for me. Alright, so with that in mind, this is kind of a low-key leveling guide. I'm going to do a whole walkthrough of the game, show you all the decisions that I make along the way, all the way I build the character, and get it started, and if you follow it, it should work for you too. Again, I think it's good for new players and those who maybe have tried the game, got frustrated with it, or just, open that passive tree and it's like, wow, what do I do with this? So I'll explain how I think about it, how I approach it, and I have a character here for you that should work for you. It really doesn't have to be hard. Some of the things are actually a lot more straightforward than they seem. Not speed running here. We're not trying to break any records. I find speed running in Path of Exile to be extremely stressful. I'm not good at it. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I just don't even enjoy it. So I don't even want to try. So I don't try too hard. I don't stress out. I don't want to optimize anything. It's not perfect. My guide probably could be improved in some ways, but it means there's going to be extra steps you have to do, which, is that actually contributing to the game being enjoyable? This character is perfectly capable of finishing the campaign. So we just want to do that. We're going to over level a bit. We're not going to be at the optimum experience gain levels in every zone for sure. That's fine. It just makes things a little easier. It takes a little more time to go through the campaign, but you know, so what? In my case, I only used currency tab. So this is one of the things that you can buy for the game, but it's not necessary. You can play this game entirely for free with just the ordinary default tabs. Later on, if you get into the end game and you're really enjoying the game, you're gonna want to buy some tabs, but it's really a very inexpensive game, and once you've bought those tabs, you never have to buy anything again. So you could, all in, maybe you want to spend 20 bucks on the game if you really end up enjoying it. That's a pretty good deal, in my opinion. I leveled this in solo sales found, so I didn't have any equipment when I started to simulate a league start environment or a brand new account, and I didn't ascend. I picked my default class, which I did not ascend. I never went through the labyrinth in my guide, and it will work perfectly fine for you. So if you will choose an Ascendancy depending on how you want to build your character, and any beneficial choices that you make in that Ascendancy will just make your character better than the baseline that I leveled with. So let's talk about that Ascendancy a little bit so you know what you're getting yourself into. Now my guide doesn't use Path of Building, but I do have it open so that it can show you these Ascendancies, and for which there's 3. There's Necromancer, Elementalist, and Occultist. We'll just start with Occultist, and here you've got a couple of beneficial nodes that you could take. Vile Bastion is a defensive node. That's going to be potentially helpful to you. Forbidden Power makes your power charges better, basically, so you're going to be doing some direct damage yourself, so this is somewhat beneficial to your character. Profane Bloom is a great node for endgame. During the campaign, it's really going to be a little hard to use because you have to apply a curse and then kill the mob, and you're not going to have a very easy way to do that. You could figure out a way to do it, but it's not that helpful during the campaign. Later on, this is incredible. And applying an additional curse here again, applying multiple curses, you need some mechanism to do that generally, and that's going to be a little harder to arrange during the campaign, so again, not super helpful to you. But just so you're aware, this is Occultist. If you want to build something for the end game, some of these nodes are really going to be helpful to you. The ones in the center don't do anything for leveling and the character I present, so this is of no use to us. Getting some chaos resistance here would be nice, but it's really not necessary. And we're going to be ailment immune, so this whole center section of the tree is of low utility. So this is probably your worst choice just for using this leveling guide, but if you want to be Occultist later on in the game, it's a very viable choice. Next up we have Elementalist, and there's really 2 nodes here that are the most valuable to you, and those are the Golem nodes. So this gives you an extra golem, and it revives your golems if they die. For me, my golems never died during the campaign, so I never had to resummon them, so this node really is probably not that of great use, but the increased buff effect is nice. We'll see how the golems benefit our character and make it more powerful, more defensive in the game. That's really good. And then, again, also enhancing our golems here and adding an extra 1. Golems have auras that empower your character and other minions, and so buffing up your golems with the Elementalist is a very viable way to go, and this would be really helpful during the campaign even. These small nodes just give you some extra stuff, which is helpful. And then you'll get to choose a third Ascendancy point during the campaign if you want. And we have this Bastion of Elements, which gives you a defensive bubble. It looks kind of cool, and it's okay. It's the strength of it's going to be based on how many notable passive skills you've taken on the passive tree. So the more powerful it'll be. By endgame, I think I had 19 notables, and so we're talking about 1,500 points of damage of additional resistance. It's just temporary. Once it dissipates, you don't have it for a while. So it's not a full-time defense, which is not great in this game, but it is helpful. So this is one you might want to consider. And by notable, we're talking about these larger nodes on the tree. I'll show you my tree once we get in game, and you'll see the notables that I have taken. And then finally, we've got Necromancer, which is the obvious choice for minions, but I wanted to show you the other options you have. And here you have nodes like Mindless Aggression here, more minion life, and more damage. So note the word more. In this game we have increased damage and more damage. Increased damage is additive, and more damage is multiplicative, which simply makes more almost always more more powerful. So as it gets into the math, but anytime you see more, you should be happy, because that's going to be a powerful node for you. So more life and damage, that's great. Alright, Bone Barrier is defensive. This is really helpful. It also prevents you from bleeding, which is a very annoying mechanic in the game, which can easily kill you in times it's not very convenient. So Bone Barrier, pretty great. Mistress of Sacrifice, so this has to do with your offering skills, which are basically temporary buffs for your minions, but this node will also allow them to apply to you. And we have the skill effect duration, which means that the offering will last longer. It's not minion duration though. Minion duration is something different, so unfortunately this doesn't help our temporary minions last longer. It's only going to affect things like offerings, which is helpful, but it's not as helpful as it could be. The main place that this is used is if you want to build a block as your defense. Then it's going to apply the offering that increases your block chance to you. So if you're building a defensive blocking character, you'll likely take this, and you'll likely use the offering that increases your block chance. But for us, not that useful in this leveling guide. We have Commander of Darkness. This one increases attack and cast speed a little bit, which is helpful. We have increased damage, which is useful, but not as good as more. So even though it's 30% instead of 10% more, mathematically this probably works out to be less overall damage than 10% more, but I can't say that confidently. It's probably true. And then plus 30 all res. That's huge. So this is really going to make it easy for us to cap our resistances, which is absolutely crucial. By the time you get to Act 6, you really want to make sure that your resistances are at least in a reasonable place. They don't have to be fully capped necessarily, but if they're not, you're not going to have a good time. And if you do have your resistances capped, it's going to be relatively easy. So this is pretty great. It also helps your minions survive, so this is a great node for us. It's probably the first one you want to take. It's up to you, but I might want to take it first. This is good. This is good. These others generally are more about corpse consumption, which we do some of with our offerings, but that's not really how our character is designed. This node here sounds great, sounds like you could stack a ton of attack and cast speed, which can be true, but it only really works for you in specialized characters. So while attack and cast speed are great in general in this game, it's hard to really make this work well. I've definitely tried the Detonate Dead character build type and skill, pretty much where this is going to be at its best. Otherwise, it's a very difficult mechanic to build for, to make it work well. We also have Unnatural Strength, which is a really cool node. It converts physical damage to chaos, which has some utility to us, but our main damage type will be lightning, so it's not going to help us that much in the playthrough. So if it were me and I were ascending through Necromancer, then I would choose Commander of Darkness, get those resistances, and then I would go for Mindless Aggression, more minion damage and life, and then I go for Bone Barrier, which is defensive, and those are going to be your 3 Ascendancy selections for the campaign. When you get into endgame, it's really up to you, depending on what you end up doing with the character, so I'll leave it at that. Okay, back to the game. So here's my character. Items and stash that I picked up along the way. Again, I just use one ordinary stash tab, and I use my currency tab. Currency tab's really not necessary even. It's helpful, and it just helped me sort the currency automatically, which is really nice. But it's really not necessary for the campaign. Could have stored these items on my character or just put them into this ordinary tab. I did get super lucky during this campaign run through. I actually dropped a Divine Orb. That is extremely unusual. I haven't seen that in many leagues. In fact, back until when actually Exalted Orbs were the big currency. So if this were a trade league, this would really be an incredibly great start to a league. You'd be able to afford some great starter gear once you got to the end game. You'd just be set up so well. But you really can't expect this. This is an extremely rare thing to happen. But I do have a couple chaos and a few alchemy, so could still do some trading if I was in trade league. And you can see the other miscellaneous items I had here. It gave me a chance to do absolutely everything I needed to do during the campaign. I don't save that much. Some people save just everything, and their tabs get extremely chaotic. I can't deal with that at all, so I only really save the stuff that I know I'm going to be using. So like I dropped a couple of maps. Of course, we'll be using these in the end game. Some essences, always really helpful during campaign. Divination cards, not terribly useful, but anyways, I picked them up. A couple of unique items. This staff is used by Animate Guardian, which is commonly used with minions. So I just collected these. If this were Trade League, these could be worth a chaos or 2 at the beginning of a league, even later into the league, so definitely want to save those. And then I found this Karui Ward, which is got stats, dexterity and strength, both of which our character needs. It's got movement speed, which is really nice. I found this really early in my playthrough, so I used it through half the campaign. It's great. Projectile stuff is just dead stats. We're not firing projectiles, so that doesn't help us. But the stats and the movement speed, that's pretty cool. I kept it until I found a better amulet, one with life, some chaos resistance here. This other stuff's not really that helpful. So the character here, my main links are Absolution, minion damage, physical to lightning, spell echo. And you'll see all this in the written guide and as I do the walkthrough, how I got here basically. I have my auras, skitterbots, and purity of elements. Skitterbots create two little bots that run around on the screen and chill and shock enemies, which is both really helpful to you. Purity of elements gives us all res and crucially ailment immunity. So ailments in this game are pretty deadly. Ignite, not that dangerous, but not great. Getting set on fire, not great. Shock increases damage that you take. That can be really deadly. And then getting frozen is super annoying because, well, you're frozen, you can't do anything. If you can't move in this game, your chances of dying are infinitely higher than if you're moving. Moving is probably the best defense in the game. So this is so much utility in purity of elements, it's hard to not use it. You could switch this out for a damage aura like Wrath, and that would definitely increase the damage of your minions and yourself. So if you're going for a good defense is a good offense, that's fine. But then you're really going to have to work on getting equipment that has the resistances you need, or getting it on the tree. That's going to be definitely make your playthrough more challenging. If you're in trade and you can just buy items from trade that have the exact resistances you need, well, you know, that's one solution to it. But purity of elements, I just think it's the way to go. Flesh offering. So here's an example of the offering I mentioned before. Increases your minions' movement speed, cast speed, attack speed. 27%. That is a lot. That is really a good gem right there. It's just temporary, and you do need corpses on the screen to offer. But that's pretty easy to arrange because you're killing stuff constantly in the game. So this is really helpful buff to your minions. And I've got my golems. Stone golem gives you life regen, which is really helpful. Also taunts, so monsters will tend to attack it instead of you. This is really a great defensive golem right here. I link it in a 4-link. The raised specter is here also. Specters are kind of a very flexible utility option here, where once you have a corpse of a monster, you can raise it into a specter that will fight for you. And some of them have helpful auras, or cast helpful spells, or have good offense, defensive characteristics. So it's a great utility for a minion build. We're using Host and Carnage Chieftains, which will give us power charges and frenzy charges, which is just more damage for us and more damage for our minions. It's a great set of specters to have. Link that to Feeding Frenzy, which is a buff that these minions will grant you if they kill something. And it will also make the minions aggressive, which actually isn't something we necessarily want in this case, because we don't want our specters to get in over their head and get killed, because it's annoying to re-raise them. But in this build, they're defensive. They've got enough defenses that they'll generally survive and you won't have a problem. And then minion life is possibly optional. I played with it and I had absolutely no problems. My golems, my specters never died. I don't know if it's necessary, but it's definitely helpful. So if you can fit it in, you have the links, you should probably use it. Okay, over here I've got my Val Summon Skeletons. So this was a Summon Skeletons gem that I corrupted using a Val Orb, and it turned into a Val Summon Skeletons. I'll show you how that works when we get to the playthrough. This is an incredible utility right here. Basically, I don't use the standard skeletons, but once you've accumulated enough souls by killing mobs, it'll activate this Val summon skeletons, and it'll put a ton of skeletons onto the screen, which are going to do damage. They're going to harass the mobs that are around you. It's going to completely swamp them. It's going to put a bunch of minions between you and what you're fighting. So it's good defense, good offense. It's cool. I love it. It's so much fun, and you don't have to support it with any other gems. Just on its own, it's totally fine. Now it is linked to these other two, but that link actually doesn't do anything because we have Convocation here, which will basically pull the minions to you and then give them some life regeneration, which is really helpful to keep them alive. I don't use this until I'm able to get the automation gem, because the automation gem will automate, just as it sounds like, it'll automate it. It will cast that Convocation automatically for us. Periodically, and so they'll always being resummoned to you, which keeps them near you, which protects you, and generally what you're fighting is going to be close to you, so it's just helpful in a lot of ways, and it will help them stay alive through the regeneration. Let's see, got Frostblink, which is our movement skill. So Frostblink, most people would go with Flame Dash because it's got a slightly different utility. I like Frostblink because isn't really used to move around. It's used defensively. If you're starting to take damage, you can use Frostblink to basically blink out of combat and stop taking damage. So it's a defensive mechanism as much as anything. However, it also does a tremendous amount of damage, and it does cold damage, so you're potentially chilling monsters, which is slowing them down and making them less powerful, and you're doing a huge amount of damage to them, so often you can just clear a pack of mobs with Frostblink alone. I don't know how a movement skill could be much better. So it's pretty cool. I just use it. You get it as a quest reward. I use it through the whole campaign and sometimes into endgame depending on the circumstances. It does have a cooldown, so you can't use it all the time. That's sort of the downside of it. You have to wait for it to be ready. And I linked that to Arcane Surge. This is optional, but once you spend enough mana with Frostblink, it'll activate Arcane Surge, increases your cast speed and mana regeneration, which is super helpful, especially early in the game. I used it all the way through the whole campaign, though, because it's just so helpful. It means you do have to have this extra socket and extra link. You don't always have that, or that's hard to get, so yeah, that can be, if you don't have it, no, don't use it, but if you do have it, that's great. I should also point out that this gem was not leveled. It's still level 1. It's at its maximum experience. It could be leveled up, but you want to keep it low because you want it to be triggered as easily as possible. It just takes 15 mana to trigger it, I believe, here. Yeah. And our Frostblink here uses 21 mana. So I could level up Arcane Surge a little bit. It's not really going to do anything particularly helpful. Like I said, I'm not a min-maxer. I just want things to work, and this works. So I'll show you how to prevent gems for leveling when we get to the walkthrough. And then we have our Carrion Golem. It's unsupported with any other links, so it doesn't make it very powerful, but it's still pretty helpful. So you can see that it does more damage depending on how many non-golem minions are near them. So we're going to have our Absolution minions. We're going to have our, I don't know if the Skitterbots are counted as a minion or not. Let's see. Yeah, so Skitterbots has the minion tag there at the top. So there's 2 more minions. So there's 3 Absolution minions. There's 2 Skitterbots, that's 5. We have 2 golems, that's 7. And then when we click our Val summon skeletons, we got a bazillion. That's a whole bunch. So we're probably going to max out that 50% increased damage, more damage rather. So they get more powerful when and they get amplified by the more minions that you have. That's pretty great. And they also grant additional physical damage to non-golem minions. So again, all of your other minions becoming more powerful with this. It's pretty fabulous. Now that's offensive. You could go with a Chaos Golem, which is going to be defensive. It's going to give you more physical damage reduction. It's a choice you could make, but once I got into the campaign, this character's survivability was very good, so I didn't feel the need at all. Alright, so all this equipment I picked up, pretty much the only thing I cared about was life. Because we get resistances from a quest in the game, we are going to get it through our Ascendancy. If we go Necromancer, we've got Purity of Elements. Getting your resistances capped is pretty easy. Not free. You're going to have to look a little bit for resistances, but if you didn't have high life roll, then I basically didn't use the item. The other thing you'll need are stats. So you're going to need some dexterity and possibly some strength. There's other ways of getting to these other than items, but it's pretty convenient if you can find some items that do have your stats on them. So anyways, all this equipment is just essentially complete junk. Yeah, for life, yeah, the helmet could be better. But it did have some resistances. There's a case where I compromised in order to get my resistances. Here you can see I bench crafted lightning resistance in order to get it capped at some point. Yeah, so all this equipment is just junk you can find on the ground during the campaign. The boots, so the whole thing we're looking for is movement speed. I don't try to put any gems in the boots because I want to be able to swap these out anytime I find a set of boots with higher movement speed on them. Earlier in the campaign we can craft movement speed, and then later we're going to look for drops. Every pair of boots that drops, you're going to identify and see if it's got movement speed, and you want to just be able to throw them on your character if it's better. In this case I got one with a high life roll, which that's really great. That's really helpful. My flasks here, you are gonna want to keep an eye out for a flask that has anti-bleed. This is really important, especially when you're running the labyrinth for your Ascendancy. Without some kind of anti-bleed, you potentially can have some real problems there. So even if it's a lesser flask, if it's got sealing on it, or there's a couple other prefixes or suffixes that cause anti-bleeding, keep it. I run two just so I can have one is essentially my healing flask, and then my other is my anti-bleed. Might get lucky and get an affix on a different flask that has anti-bleed, in which case, go ahead and use it. For a mana flask, if we can get it in an enduring mana flask, one happens to drop, that's probably the most helpful one that you can use. Otherwise, I just throw in whatever highest level flask I find in there. Actually, I got a couple unidentified ones here, so let's see what we got. Simmering and Turbid. So, I'm not even going to bother. If one of those was an enduring, I'd put it in there. But otherwise, it doesn't matter. I picked up this flask during the campaign, and I just used it to make sure my resistances were capped. Flasks are always temporary, and I barely press them, except for the mana and life. So, yeah, this is pretty much just a placeholder for something useful later on. And then Granite Flask is always a good one. It gives you a bunch of armor, and if you can be bothered to press flask buttons, well, that's going to help you stay alive. Flask course effects are only temporary, so they're helpful, but temporary effects, yeah, it's not great. We want things to be full-time. If they're part-time, well, you know, you benefit from them a bit when they're up, but you know, so many random things happen in the game, and they happen at times you can't predict or expect. So it's hard to be reactive. It's there's some reactive gameplay in Path of Exile, but mostly it's just, you know, things like you don't react to being frozen by pressing your anti-freeze flask. It's be ailment immune. Just avoid the freeze altogether. That's what Path of Exile is a bit more about. So we'll take these temporary effects because they are really good effects, but just keep in mind that anything that's temporary, partial, has limited application when it comes to defenses. Something like Val Summon Skeletons, it's temporary, but it's a damage buff, and we're gonna save it for when we need it. There's your reactive gameplay element. Okay. That's the character. So I finished this character in about 10 hours, and that's why I was creating this guide, so it was quite a bit of AFAC time. I think I probably could have easily done it in 5 or 6 hours, and that'd be pretty normal for me. So just comparing it to other characters, I'd say the relative strength of this is quite good for the campaign. I'm not a speedrunner, so someone who was, you know, have all these little tricks that they can do to speed up the leveling process. I don't rush. I take my time. I spend time looking through the vendors, seeing what equipment they have, to see if there's something I can use to upgrade or find the right links that I'm looking for. So yeah, that's the character. So let's take a quick look at gameplay. And just go to Desecrated Chambers. I didn't finish the final boss yet. I just wanted to show you my character as it is. This is what the gameplay looks like. So you can see when I attacked with Absolution, it summoned the Absolution minions, and you can see that my specters are creating charges, power charges and frenzy charges, which are increasing the power of me and the minions. Use I need more mana. Use Frostwing to stay away from damage. Click the flasks when I run out of mana.
Life is short.
You can see the damage is okay.
When I'm ready, I'm not ready.
Survivability is okay. Yeah, so it's basically what the character looks like in action.